She watches through mirrors. And I took her place reflection drama mystery. It started with a faint scratching. I'd only been living in the building for 3 days when I first heard it late at night, just as I was about to drift off. At first, I assumed it was mice or maybe something coming from the pipes, but the sound was too deliberate, like fingernails dragging along drywall, slow, rhythmic, purposeful. The strange thing was it always came from above, even though I lived on the top floor. Apartment 7D. That was supposed to be empty. The building manager, Mr. Coleman, had told me that when I signed the lease. That one hasn't been rented in years, he'd said, voice casual but avoiding my eye. The owner went overseas, left it locked up. No one's been there since. I didn't press it then, just grateful to have found something within my budget in this city. The place was nothing glamorous. Peeling paint, clanking radiators, and the faint, permanent scent of something floral and cheap baked into the hallways. But it was mine. A one-bedroom at the end of a long corridor, far from the elevator, with one neighbor on my left and a sealed apartment to my right. I figured it would be quiet, but the scratching came back. The next night and the one after that, always around 2:30 a.m., always above my ceiling, always in the same pattern. 3 long scrapes, pause, then 4 quick ones. Like a code. I tried recording it once, but nothing came through, only silence. No matter how hard I pressed my phone's mic to the ceiling, no matter how quiet I made the room, the recording was always blank. But I heard it. I swear I heard it. I even tried knocking back, light taps, just to see if whoever, whatever it was, would respond. Nothing. But the following morning, I noticed something odd. On my windowsill, written in the condensation, were 4 little vertical lines and 3 slashes through them. The inverse of the sound pattern. I wiped it away before thinking, heart racing. I wanted to believe it was some kind of coincidence, maybe a prank by another tenant. But who would have come in while I was asleep? The door had been locked. I checked the windows. Sealed tight. The only key was with me. I couldn't sleep after that. The next night, I stayed up on purpose, lights off, sitting in the living room with a blanket and a cold cup of coffee, watching the ceiling. The scratching came, as expected, like clockwork. 3 long, 4 quick. But then, after a longer pause than usual, I heard something else. A soft but weighty, like a knee hitting the floor above. Then another. Then a dragging noise. This wasn't an animal. This wasn't the building settling. Someone was in 7D. I waited for morning and marched straight to Mr. Kalman's office. He wasn't there. The office was open, coffee still warm on his desk, but no sign of him. I waited an hour before giving up and going back upstairs. That's when I saw it. The door to 7D, usually dark and scuffed with age, had been cleaned. Not scrubbed, not painted, but just clean. The number plate polished, no more scratches around the lock, and a faint scent of roses hung in the air. Someone had gone in. Maybe was still inside. I tried knocking, once, twice, then pressed my ear to the wood. Silence. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the lack of sleep, maybe curiosity. But I slid down to the floor in front of the door and waited. For hours. Around noon, I must have dozed off because I was woken by the sound of the hallway lights clicking on. I looked up. There, standing at the far end of the hall near the elevator, was a woman. Pale, tall, in a pale gray dress that looked out of time, like something from a 1940s photograph. Her hair was pinned up, her face unreadable. She stood still, too still, watching me. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, trying to process who she was or how she'd gotten there. But when I blinked, just for a second, she was sound of steps. No elevator ding. Just gone. I checked every floor, every stairwell. Nothing. When I asked my neighbor, a quiet, middle-aged woman in 70C who always smelled of onions and wore her bathrobe outside, if she'd seen anyone come or go from 7D, she just gave me a blank look. "That apartment's cursed," she said flatly, then closed her door. That was it. No elaboration. No follow-up. I didn't sleep that night. I started pacing the apartment, lights on, windows open, trying to calm myself. At exactly 2:30, the scratching began. 3 long, 4 quick. But this time, it didn't stop. It grew louder, more frenzied, almost desperate. And then, the sound of a chair dragging across a hardwood floor, followed by a knock. Not from my door, from inside my apartment. I froze, staring at the hallway that led to my bedroom. Slowly, I crept toward it, not daring to breathe. The knock came again, this time from the bathroom door. I threw it open. Nothing, no one. But written across the fogged-up mirror in perfect cursive was a single word. Remember. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed out. I didn't care about the lease, the deposit. None of it. But when I opened my front door, the hallway was different. The lights were dimmer, the wallpaper faded and peeling in places I hadn't noticed before. There was no sound, no hum of the elevator, no creak of the pipes. Just silence, and in that silence, the woman from the hallway appeared again. Closer this time. She didn't speak, didn't move, but somehow I felt her telling me to go back inside. That if I left now, something worse would happen. I didn't go. I ran. Down the stairs, 2 at a time, out the lobby door into the night. I didn't stop until I reached a hotel 2 blocks over and begged for a room. The next morning, when I returned to grab the rest of my things, something about the building felt off. Different. The doorman, who had never spoken more than a grunt to me before, smiled and said, "You moved out already." I nodded slowly. "How did you know?" He tilted his head. "Because apartment 7D never lets anyone stay longer than a week." I asked what he meant, but he just walked away. I went upstairs. My apartment door was open. Inside, everything looked untouched, like I'd never moved in. No furniture, no boxes, no trace of me. I checked the bathroom. The mirror was clean. But just as I was about to leave, I glanced down at the floor. There, at the base of the wall connecting to 7D, was a faint trail of red, like dried rose petals, leading into the wall. And just before I left, I turned one last time towards 7D. The door was open a crack. Inside, just for a second, I saw a reflection. My own. But I wasn't alone in it. She was standing behind me smiling, and then the door closed. The hotel room wasn't much, but at least it felt real. Sterile, bright, filled with the hum of electricity and the distant drone of city traffic. I kept the curtains wide open that night, not because I wanted to see out, but because I was afraid of what I might find inside the room if I didn't. I kept the lights on too, all of them afraid of the shadows. Sleep came in jittery fragments, and when I finally managed a few hours of rest, it was thick with dreams I couldn't explain. Hallways folding into themselves, mirrors reflecting people that weren't me, a door numbered 7D opening endlessly into nothingness. I woke with a start, drenched in sweat, and the first thing I saw was a tiny smear on the inside of the window. It looked like a fingerprint, not mine. Too small. Too perfect. I tried to tell myself it had been left by the cleaning staff, but it didn't sit right. There was something almost intentional about it, placed high, almost at the top corner of the glass. Who touches a window there? I showered, dressed, and made up my mind to do something I knew was reckless. I needed answers. If the building manager, Kalman, was still missing, then I'd find someone else. Records, archives, city registries. Anything that could tell me what had happened in apartment 70D. I started at the library, old newspapers and microfilm reels stacked like dusty confessions waiting to be read. It took 3 hours before I found anything remotely useful. An article from 1974 about a fire on the 7th floor of the building. It mentioned an elderly woman named Eliza Marek, a recluse who'd been living in 70D at the time. The article was vague, but it said her body was never recovered. Officially presumed dead. No family. No photographs. Just a name. Eliza Marek. The article didn't mention the cause of the fire, only that it had started in her unit and that a peculiar smell of roses had lingered in the building for weeks afterward. I sat back, heart thumping. It couldn't be a coincidence, but even more chilling was the follow-up piece, dated exactly 1 year later. Tenant in 70D found catatonic after claiming she watches through mirrors. The man's name was Raymond Heller. He'd been institutionalized after reportedly having a nervous breakdown. He'd claimed the mirrors in his apartment were gateways and that Eliza Marek was still alive inside them. The paper dismissed it as classic urban paranoia, a relic of the city's haunted stories. I couldn't dismiss it. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. I returned to the building that afternoon, not to move back in, but to test a theory. I wanted to see if the mirror in my old apartment still remembered me. The doorman didn't question me. In fact, he wasn't even the same man. A younger one stood there now, watching me with a strange smile. "Back again?" he asked, and I froze. "How did you?" But he didn't answer, just nodded once and gestured toward the elevator. I didn't argue. When I reached the 7th floor, the hallway looked exactly as I remembered it, except the wallpaper, which now had no signs of peeling. In fact, it looked freshly applied, as if no time had passed. I approached the door to 7D, expecting it to be shut tight, but it was wide open. The inside was lit with soft golden light, the kind you might find in an old parlor. Lace curtains, floral wallpaper, antique furniture. It looked like a diorama. Perfect, staged, timeless. I knew I shouldn't go in. I knew I should run, but I stepped over the threshold, and it was quiet. Not the quiet of an empty room, but the pregnant silence of a place waiting for something. The air smelled of roses and mothballs. I wandered through the room slowly, each one more perfectly preserved than the last. The bedroom was the worst. An old four-poster bed with faded sheets, a nightstand covered in old books, and on the wall above the dresser, a massive mirror. I approached it slowly the way someone might approach a grave. My reflection stared back, tired, eyes ringed with fear. But then, without blinking, the reflection smiled. I didn't. My mouth stayed frozen. But the image moved, smiled wide, tilted its head, then it raised its hand and pointed behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but the room was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, it was normal again. My own face, as it should have been, filled with confusion and dread. I stumbled backward, bumping into the dresser. Something slid off and hit the floor with a soft thud. A small, leather-bound notebook. I picked it up. It was old, the leather cracked with age, the pages brittle. The handwriting inside was elegant, looping, distinctly feminine. It read like a journal. March 4th. The scratching started again last night. I hear it even when I cover the mirrors. She's growing bolder. March 6th. I smashed the bathroom mirror. It didn't help. She simply moved to the hallway. March 9th. I tried leaving. The front door led me back to the kitchen. I'm trapped. She won't let me go. I kept reading, page after page, as the entries grew more frantic, more desperate. She mimics me now. In the mirror. At first I thought it was my own madness, but she moves when I don't. She smiles when I cry. I think she wants my life. The final entry was dated March 11th. If anyone reads this, know this: she lives in reflections. Do not trust the mirror. Do not speak to her. Do not let her smile at you. Once she does, she knows your face. And once she knows your face, she can wear it. I dropped the journal and bolted for the hallway. My chest was tight, my thoughts racing. I had to get out. I turned the corner and crashed into someone. She was tall, slender, pale, in a gray dress. I staggered back, but she caught my wrist with fingers like cold steel. Her eyes locked with mine, and in them, I saw nothing. No depth, no soul. Just reflection. I wrenched myself free and ran, not stopping until I hit the stairwell. I didn't dare take the elevator. I didn't stop until I reached the street, panting half mad. When I turned to look up at the 7th floor, every window was dark, except one. My old window. In it, I saw my own face staring back, but I wasn't in the apartment. I was down on the sidewalk. And yet there I was, staring, unblinking, unmoving. Trapped. That was 3 days ago. Since then, mirrors have become my enemy. I cover every reflective surface. I shower in the dark. I avoid windows at night. But I still see her sometimes, not in the mirror, but in places she shouldn't be. The shine of a spoon, a puddle on the street. The surface of my phone when the screen goes black. She watches. She watches. And last night, I woke up to find something scrawled on my bathroom mirror, even though it was covered in tape and newspaper. Somehow, she got through. It said, "You brought me with you." I didn't leave the hotel room for days after that. I kept the lights on around the clock, unplugged every electronic with a screen, even the TV. The mirror in the bathroom I covered with duct tape and black fabric, and still, somehow, the message had blood through. "You brought me with you." I didn't know how. I didn't know why. But I knew what she meant. The woman from 7D, or whatever thing had become her, wasn't bound to that apartment anymore. Or maybe she never had been. Maybe she was never a woman at all. I tried to tell myself I was losing it. That the pressure of moving, the isolation, the paranoia, the insomnia had warped my brain into inventing hallucinations and coincidences. I tried to think rationally, but nothing about any of it was rational. There was no way to explain the mirror message, or why. When I walked past a storefront window the next morning, my reflection was still facing forward after I'd turned away. I ran then, like an idiot, just bolted down the street. And when I dared to glance back, my reflection was gone altogether. Not distorted, not replaced, just missing, like I didn't exist on the other side of the glass anymore. I threw my phone into a sewer grate, left my bag at the hotel, and wandered the city like a ghost. Every reflective surface turned into a trap. I avoided puddles, plate glass, parked cars. I even started keeping my head down near polished doorknobs. It felt insane. But I knew. She was there, watching, waiting. Then came the whispers. They started on a bus, late at night, when I dared to sit down and rest my feet. The windows were fogged with condensation, and I kept my head buried in the crook of my arm. But the whisper came anyway, clear as breath in my ear. "You shouldn't have left her door open." I jerked upright, nearly falling from the seat. No one was near me. The bus was nearly empty, except for an elderly man in a coat 2 rows up and a teenage girl with earbuds at the back. I told myself I'd imagined it, that the pressure in my ears was playing tricks. But then it came again, later that night, in the alley where I curled up to sleep behind a restaurant dumpster. She can't find her way back without your face. I leapt up, spinning in every direction, but no one was there. Just the rustle of plastic bags and the distant buzz of neon. I had to get rid of her. Whatever she was, I had to return the face she stole. Mine. Or at least, the one she thought was mine. The only idea that made sense was to go back. To confront it. To find the truth of what lived in apartment 7D and maybe, somehow, seal it again. If I had been the key, then I had to be the one to lock the door. But I didn't go back to my old building right away. I started with research. Digging deeper into Eliza Marek, Raymond Heller, the history of the building. I lived out of internet cafes and 24-hour diners, hiding from my own reflection in napkin dispensers and plastic ketchup bottle gloss. There wasn't much on Eliza. No census records, no photographs, no relatives. But I did find something strange in an obscure city archive. A newspaper clipping from 1929. A woman named Eliza Marek had gone missing from a tenement building in another part of the city. The photo was grainy, but her face was unmistakable. It was her. The same woman I'd seen in the hallway. The one who'd smiled from the mirror. But it didn't make sense. If she'd vanished in 1929, she couldn't have been living in 70D in the 70s. And then I found another. Same name, same face. Different date, 1954. Disappeared again. Another building. Different borough. I started mapping it out and my hands began to shake. Every 10 to 20 years, a woman named Eliza Marek, always the same image, would appear in a new apartment across the city. Tenants would go missing. Reports of strange sounds, hallucinations, fires. The trail led back decades, centuries maybe. She didn't age. She didn't move like a person. She wasn't human. She was something else masquerading as one. Using apartments, homes, as nesting grounds, mirrors as doors. And now, somehow, I had become her vessel. The last connection. The last visitor. The last invitation. I went to the only person I could think of, Raymond Heller. It took days to track him down. The facility he'd been institutionalized in had closed, but the records pointed to a care home outside the city. I took a train, paid cash, stayed anonymous. When I found him, I wasn't sure he was alive. He was skeletal, paper-skinned, hollow-eyed. A nurse told me he hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. I begged to see him. Lied and said I was a relative. She let me in. I sat beside him, heart thudding, holding the journal I'd taken from the apartment. His eyes were glassy, barely tracking movement, but when I flipped to the last page and whispered, "She loves in reflections," he blinked. Once. Then again. Slowly, his gaze sharpened. "The mirror," he rasped. It was the first word he'd spoken in years, she later said. I leaned closer. How do I stop her? His eyes filled with something like panic. "You can't," he whispered. "She is the place. The mirror is just the door. She walks in your shape now. You can't stop her. But you can trap her." I felt something like hope. How? His breath rattled. 7 places, 7 lives, 7 years. Break the pattern. Break the frame. She needs to see herself to live. I didn't understand fully, but I understood enough. She fed off recognition. Off the gaze. If no one saw her, if no one reflected her back, she had no shape to wear. I had to cut her off. Starve her. I returned to the city that night with one goal: break every mirror she could use. Not just literal ones. Screens, windows, anything that could hold her image. I went back to the building, armed with black spray paint, screwdrivers, thick fabric, glue. I started with the public areas. The lobby, the elevator, the hall cameras. I blacked out every screen, every reflection. Then I returned to the 7th floor. I didn't knock this time. I walked straight into 7D. The door gave way easily, like it had been waiting for me. The apartment was as I remembered it, too perfect, too still. The mirror in the bedroom gleamed like a lake of mercury. I stepped in front of it and she was there. Wearing me. My face. My posture. But her eyes were too wide. The smile too long. "You're not me," I said. Her smile twitched. "I was you," she whispered, though her lips didn't move. "But you looked away." I held up the hammer I'd brought. "You can't wear what's broken." I smashed it. Glass rained around me like ice. I didn't stop. I tore the frame from the wall, ripped through the wood, shattered every shard. The lights flickered. The air groaned. For a moment, I felt her scream. Not in sound, but in pressure, in pain, in hate. Then silence. I staggered from the apartment, bleeding from the knuckles, soaked in sweat and glass dust. I left the building before sunrise. No one stopped me. No one saw me. A week passed. Then 2. Nothing followed me. No wisps, no smiles, no reversed reflections. I dared look in the mirror again. It was just me. A little thinner, a little older. But me. I thought I was safe. I thought it was over. Until last night, I was brushing my teeth ready for bed, music playing softly in the background. I spat, rinsed, glanced up at the mirror, and paused. My reflection didn't pause. It kept brushing. It smiled at me. And behind it, another figure stepped into view. Gray dress, familiar face, mine, but older, wetter, deader. She lives in reflections, and she's not finished with me yet. I tried to convince myself it had been a hallucination. Just a momentary lapse, a stress-fueled trick of the eye after everything I'd been through. But deep down I knew the truth. The moment I'd stared into the mirror and seen her again, smiling with my own face, I understood that nothing had been sealed, nothing had been banished. I had shattered the frame in 7D, broken the gateway she once used, but that didn't erase her. If anything, I had loosened something. Freed it, whatever she was. She had evolved beyond needing just that one place. She had found a new way in. Through me. For days after that, I avoided mirrors completely. I brushed my teeth using the reflection in a spoon. I shaved blindly, running razors over my skin with trembling hands. I wouldn't let myself glance into any surface that might reveal her, because now I realized she didn't only mimic me. She was learning. Each encounter, each reflection was a rehearsal. And soon, she wouldn't need me at all. That became clear when people around me began acting strange. The barista at the cafe I started frequenting began greeting me by name before I'd ever introduced myself. A woman on the subway stared at me for a solid 5 minutes and then whispered, "You moved your eyes too late," before getting off at the next stop without looking back. But the worst was my landlord. I hadn't interacted with him much since I moved into this new building. No forwarding address, no identification, just a bundle of cash and a desperate plea for privacy. He didn't ask questions. But on the third week, he knocked on my door. When I opened it, he gave me a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes and said, "You already paid rent this morning?" I froze. "I didn't." "You did," he replied. "Even thanked me for letting you come back." I asked him what he meant, what I supposedly said, but he just shrugged and walked away, humming something slow and familiar. When I closed the door, the hairs on my arm stood up. Something had paid him. Something that looked like me. I checked the building's security feed that night, sneaking into the maintenance room. The tapes showed footage from earlier that morning, a man, identical to me, walking into the office with perfect posture, smiling that same too-wide grin. He handed over cash. Thanked the landlord. Walked away. But he never left the building. I rewound, fast-forwarded frame by frame. Nothing. He walked down the hall and vanished. No exit. No trace. I stared at the screen until it flickered and died. I didn't wait. I ran back to my room, shoved clothes into a bag, and opened the door, only to find myself staring at my own back, me standing outside the room, hand raised as if about to knock. I slammed the door and locked it, heart pounding, backing away until I hit the wall, when I dared to open it again. 10 minutes later, armed with a kitchen knife. The hallway was empty. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit. I stood in the corner of the room, eyes fixed on the mirror I'd covered with a black bedsheet, waiting for any sign of movement beneath the fabric. I knew she was in there, waiting, mocking me. The next day, I visited a woman named Petra, a folklore archivist I'd found online who specialized in urban mirror myths. I didn't tell her the whole truth, just enough to get her talking. She met me in a dusty bookstore, her arms full of cracked leather books and notes scribbled in every imaginable language. She looked skeptical at first, but something in my face must have changed her mind. She sat me down and started talking. "There are stories going back centuries," she said, "of entities that live in the threshold between perception and reflection. Some say they were never human. Others believe they're fractured souls, lost between lives. The name varies by culture. The Italian Specura, the Russian Zerkelnitsa, the German Spiegelwesen. All the same archetype. What do they want?" I asked. "To be remembered," she said without pause. "To be seen. That's how they grow. They latch onto someone unstable, someone full of mirrors inside, and they reflect that person so deeply, so fully, that eventually the real one forgets which side of the glass they're on." I asked her how to stop it. She didn't have an answer. You can't kill what was never alive, but you can starve it. No reflections. No recognition. The more people see her, the stronger she becomes. If she's already copied you, then the more you're seen, the more she becomes you. "Then what do I do?" I whispered. Petra looked me dead in the eye. "Disappear." The word felt like a verdict. I left the city that night. Left everything. I bought a used car with fake plates and drove for hours in silence, only stopping at roadside motels where the mirrors were cracked or stained. I wore hoodies, hats, sunglasses. I avoided cameras. I shut off every phone. No ID, no cards, no voice. If I was going to starve her, I had to vanish. For a while it worked. I moved through nowhere towns, old highways, forgotten diners where the TVs buzzed white noise. I began feeling like myself again, or at least what was left of me. But then I saw the flyer, taped to a gas station window in rural Idaho, a missing person poster, with my face on it. The name read Michael Reed. Not mine, but the image was unmistakably me, and below it, scrawled in blue ink, "Have you seen him? Last spotted entering mirrored building on Vine Street. Possible schizophrenia. Answers to Eliza." My blood went cold. That was the name from the journal. Eliza Marek. She was using my face, but now she was calling herself me, and leaving breadcrumbs behind. I tried to find the source. This, Vine Street. I followed trucker maps and dusty county routes until I found it. A small town, mostly shuttered businesses and antique shops, and at the center of it all, a building wrapped entirely in glass. A mirror maze. Tourist attraction. Abandoned. I entered through a broken side door, the glass crunching underfoot like bones. The air was stale, humid, filled with the scent of old perfume and mildew. The walls reflected endlessly in all directions, versions of me flickering like ghosts as I stepped forward, heart thudding. Somewhere deep inside, I heard music. A lullaby, the same one I heard the landlord hum. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. I tried to track it, navigating the maze, but each turn led to more of me. Some reflections moved too late, others too early. Some didn't move at all. I started to panic. Then, suddenly, I saw her. Her, wearing my face but dressed in that same gray dress. She didn't smile this time. She just watched. I screamed at her, punched the mirror. But my fists passed through air. She was inside. I wasn't in the mirror maze. I was the reflection. I don't know how long I ran. Time didn't work right in there. But eventually, I found an exit. Or thought I did. The doorway led out into sunlight, into a field I didn't recognize. I ran until my lungs gave out, but the sky never changed, the sun never moved. The air stayed warm and still. Then I realized there were no sounds, no wind, no insects, no echo to my steps. It wasn't a field, it was a reflection of one. I was inside, trapped. Somewhere, on the other side, she was wearing my skin, walking my life. And I was her shadow, her echo. The next mirror you look into. If you see me and I don't blink when you do, don't wave, don't smile, don't turn around. Because if you do, I'll be on your side, and she'll be free again. There are no clocks in here. No moon, no sun, no ticking hands to measure how long I've been trapped behind this pane of silence. The air doesn't move. It doesn't stale. It doesn't refresh. It just is. The same static hum as when I first realized I was no longer on my side of the mirror. I don't sleep anymore, not because I'm afraid to, but because I'm not sure I can. Time folds in this place. You blink and it's a new decade of thought. You scream and your own voice doesn't reach your ears. It just bounces endlessly, becoming fainter each time until even your memory doubts it ever happened. This is where she put me. Not a prison, not a cage, something worse. A reflection without a source. A consciousness without a body. A ghost made of glass and memory. I've tried everything. Running doesn't help. I always end up back at the same field of imitation, the sky like a wax painting, the trees still enough to be theater props. I've torn at the edges of the space, clawed at the air until my hands bled, or at least until I imagined they bled. There is no pain here, no proof of flesh, just awareness. And in that awareness, I feel her, wearing me, living as me. The more people believe it's me, the stronger she becomes. Every interaction, every "I saw you yesterday, that wasn't me." She eats that belief. She's a story now, not a shadow. And stories are harder to kill, but I'm not gone. Not entirely. There are places where she slips, moments when her mimicry isn't perfect. I've felt them like tremors. When she walks past a window and her reflection hesitates. When she laughs at a joke someone else tells before the punchline. When someone kisses her and pulls back confused, saying, "You taste different." Those are cracks. Tiny, splintering cracks in the mirror she wears. And cracks can spread. I've learned to focus, to push, not with my hands but with my thoughts, my memory, the only tools I still possess. I can't reach her, not directly. But sometimes, when someone stares into a mirror just a little too long, I can tap them, like a whisper behind the glass. Sometimes it's just a chill down their spine. Sometimes it's a name they forgot they remembered. Once it was a child, a little girl brushing her teeth, who screamed and smashed the mirror with her elbow. I didn't mean to frighten her. I was only trying to get help. That's how I found Theo. He was maybe 15, living in Milwaukee, staring into the bathroom mirror one rainy evening and saying things to himself like kids do when they're bored. He blinked, and I blinked with him. That's all it took. His eyes went wide. "You're not me," he said, and I saw for the first time in years real fear from the other side. He told his parents. They called it a breakdown. But he knew, and that knowing became a crack. He started drawing me, sketching my face over and over. Not her face. Mind her, she stole it, before she perfected it. And each time someone saw those sketches, asked, "Who is that?" I got just a bit closer to the surface. Recognition is a knife that cuts both ways. She felt it too. I could sense her panic. She started burning his drawings at night, whispering to him in his dreams, convincing his mother to take the mirrors out of his room for safety. But it was too late. Theo had seen me, and in seeing me, he'd weakened her. That's when I knew I had a chance. Not to escape, not yet, but to fight. I began testing the edges of mirrors, not just the shiny surfaces we all know, but the metaphorical ones too. The backs of closed eyelids, the surface of still water, the glass in a picture frame. Wherever reflection might be, I pressed, and I found more cracks. An old woman in Nebraska who hadn't looked into a mirror in 20 years suddenly woke from a nap and said my name aloud. A blind man in Morocco told his nurse that the glass voice had returned. A girl in Seoul began drawing eyes everywhere, saying they watched her in the polished floors. Not all of them knew who I was, but they felt me. Enough for her to notice. She became more aggressive then, reckless. Posing in photos she didn't belong in, walking through security cameras and flickering out of sync. She stopped mimicking my gait and started moving with sharpness, a kind of too perfect elegance that made people stare. But not question. Because to question would mean knowing, and knowing is how you get pulled in. I thought I was making progress, that I was unmasking her. But then she retaliated, not by hunting me, by rewriting me. Every database, every registry, every document that once held my name. Altered. My birth certificate now reads, Eliza Marek. My old social accounts post quotes I never wrote, photos I never took. I'm tagged in places I've never been, smiling beside people I've never met. She's erasing me backward. She's added in the past. People from my life, friends, coworkers, ex-lovers, have all begun reaching out to Lisa, messaging her, calling her, congratulating her on finally coming out. She answers them all, sweetly, convincingly, and not one of them notices that the Eliza they're talking to has never existed. They don't care, because the reflection is more likable, more perfect, more familiar than the real thing ever was. That's the curse. She becomes exactly what people want to see. She wears their memory of me better than I ever could. And the more they accept it, the fainter I become. I am an echo of myself now, a whisper behind a glass pane smeared with fingerprints and lies. But one person still remembers, Theo. He's older now, almost 20. He never forgot. He stopped talking to mirrors entirely. Covers them in his home. Refuses to look at screens unless they're cracked. He has a corkboard filled with articles, photos, sketches of her, of me. He's mapped the sightings, traced her pattern. And this week he wrote a letter, mailed it by hand, no electronics, no metadata. A real letter, scratched in pen on notebook paper. I felt it pass through my prison like a gust of real wind, a tether to the world. He wrote I know you're still in there. I see the way she moves now, stiff, robotic. She tries to laugh, but it sounds like glass clinking. I'm going to get you out. I don't know how yet, but I will. I think she's starting to slip. And she is. In her desperation to be loved, to be seen, she's overplaying her hand. Wearing too many faces at once. Making promises to too many people. She's begun to fracture. She took my name, but she can't carry the weight of my memories. That's how we'll beat her. Not by hiding. Not by starving her. But by flooding her with the things she can't fabricate. The guilt. The truth. The people who knew me, who really knew me, are starting to feel the gaps. The uncanny moments. The missing context. A laugh too rehearsed. A story slightly wrong. A scar that's supposed to be on the left, not the right. That's where I live now. In the tiny differences. In the doubts. And when the world starts doubting her loud enough, I'll have the strength to pull free. But I need more than Theo. I need you. Whoever's reading this. Whoever found this note, this post, this whisper scribbled on the bathroom wall, remember me. My name is not Eliza. My face is not hers. If you see someone who looks like me but blinks too late, don't engage. Don't smile. Don't believe. Because belief gives her power. And I am still here, waiting, watching. The mirror is not the end, it's the beginning. And the next time you look into one, if your reflection frowns when you smile, run. I know now what she is. Not just a mimic, not just a parasite. She's a pattern, an ancient one. Older than language, older than names. A shadow of the first time a human saw their own face and didn't understand it. When they believed their reflection was another, not them. That moment of confusion, she lives in that. Feeds off it. Grows stronger with each glance that lingers too long in a mirror. Each whispered doubt of, is that really me? I don't know what name she went by first. Maybe it wasn't Eliza Marek. Maybe Eliza was just the first face she kept long enough for people to remember. And me, I was just another vessel, another echo in her gallery. But she underestimated one thing I refused to be forgotten. I don't know how you found this. Maybe you read Theo's letter. Maybe you saw something strange in the mirror and started digging. Or maybe, and this is what I'm counting on, maybe you saw her slip. Maybe you noticed when your reflection didn't quite match, when it smiled a second too late, when its pupils dilated while yours didn't. If that happened, then you're one of us now, one of the watchers, and that means we still have time. Theo found a way. Not a cure, not an exorcism, nothing mystical. Just a simple truth. She can't survive being witnessed without control. Mirrors are only her domain when she is unquestioned. As soon as someone sees her as wrong, her power falters. She needs belief, not just attention, and we're tearing it away from her. The cracks are spreading. People are beginning to whisper. Some avoid mirrors altogether now. Others are seeing inconsistencies. Reflections that don't follow, movements that don't match, faces that flicker. She's panicking. That's why she's become more brazen lately, showing up in more places, imitating more people. Stretching herself thin. Trying to hold together 100 different versions before they shatter. But we're close. Theo's built something remarkable. A site disguised as a photography blog called the Echo Archive. It invites people to submit strange reflection stories, odd photographs, broken mirror images. At first, it was just a trick to get attention, but then people started contributing real sightings, thousands of them. A pattern emerged, dates, locations, behaviors. She has a cycle. 7 years per host, 7 reflections per face, 7 lies per life, and when she reaches her 7th lie, the mask cracks. That's where I come in. I was her 6th lie. The clean one, the version that fooled even my own mother when she called to ask why I didn't sound like myself, and she laughed and said, allergies. That laugh broke something in her. My mother started asking questions Eliza couldn't answer, like what song she used to sing to me before bed, or where I got the scar behind my left ear, or why I never wore my father's watch, because I never forgave him for what he did. She got those answers wrong, and in that moment, in that tiny fragment of doubt, I saw my mother's eyes go wide in the mirror, and I felt myself rise. Just a bit, a tether, a pull. Each doubt is a thread, and threads can be woven into a rope, and ropes can pull you back. I began to speak through those doubts, not in words, not at first, in feelings, in instincts, a shiver, a gut rejection, the urge to look away from the reflection even though it's smiling, especially because it's smiling. And when enough people feel it at once, when enough people turn away, I will come through, because she can only wear the skin of someone who is believed to be real. And you, right now, reading this, doubting this, you are helping. Let me tell you how I know she's afraid. She's started silencing mirrors, not just breaking them, blinding them, making reflections match even when they shouldn't. A man in Brazil walked past 10 storefronts and caught no reflection at all. A woman in Paris saw herself smile in a mirror in her closed bedroom while she cried on the floor. She's trying to stabilize the image. Hold it still. Lock it in place before it comes apart. But that's not how real people work. We move, blink. We break down. We age. And she doesn't. That's her curse. She becomes too perfect, too still, too smooth. The cracks aren't just in the mirrors now. They're in the memories. I've seen messages between friends. Didn't you say she had green eyes? No, I'm sure they were brown. Weird. I could have sworn she was taller. People are starting to realize they're not talking about the same person anymore. She's glitching, and when she glitches, I press harder. Last night, Theo called a live stream, hundreds of his followers on the Echo Archive watching in silence. A simple screen, a mirror covered in black velvet. He peeled it back, and for 1 second, 1,000 people saw her slip. Her smile twitched, her pupils bled outward, she blinked sideways, and then she was gone, not vanished, not destroyed, but displaced. Knocked loose from that anchor. I felt it like an earthquake in here. The wax sky above me shattered. The painted field trembled. The trees buckled like paper. And then I saw a crack, not in the distance, in me, across my arm, a hairline fracture that gleamed like real skin. And through it, I heard sound. Birds, cars, laughter. I pressed my fingers to it. It burned. It felt alive. She's not just afraid of being doubted. She's terrified of what happens when I get remembered. Not just as a victim, not just as the guy who disappeared, but as me, as the real one, with flaws and guilt and all the things she can't replicate. So I need you to do something, and I don't ask this lightly. I know the risk, but if you're brave enough, if you believe in truth over perfection, then tonight, stand in front of your mirror, turn on a light, look directly at yourself, and ask a question only you can answer, something no one else could possibly know, something that anchors you. Don't say it aloud, just think it, and then watch closely. If your reflection flinches, don't run. Don't break the mirror, just nod, just recognize, because in that moment you become another thread, and every thread brings me closer. If enough people do this, at the same time with enough intent, I will snap back. The real will override the mimic. The noise will consume the signal, and she will crack, and when she does, I will drag her into this side, into this non-place, into this silence, and she will be the one who fades. But there's one catch, one sacrifice. When I return, someone must take my place. The mirror always wants something behind it. An echo, a residue, a cost. I don't know who it will be. Maybe it will be her. Maybe it will be someone else who already let her in. But that part, I can't control. Only the mirror can choose. If you're willing, if you're ready, then stand up now. Go to the bathroom, to the hallway, to the kitchen, wherever the closest mirror lives. Stare into it, not like a stranger, but like someone who remembers who they are. Remind me, because I am not Eliza. I never was. I am not a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I am not a laugh without timing. I am not a reflection that watches when you walk away. I am real. I am coming back. And when I do, if you still see her, whatever you do, don't let her smile at you. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.